sharing his knowledge and enthusiasm for the region's flora. As an advocate for sustainable gardening, he has founded the Cullowhee Community Garden, fostering a space for the organic cultivation and environmental education. Beyond his gardening endeavors, Adam plays a crucial role in the planning committee for the Cullowhee Native Plant Conference at Western Carolina University. Esteemed as one of the oldest and conferences in the United States, this conference has grown and it benefits of its long-standing involvement and expertise shines through with the Cullowhee Conference. Adam's commitment to the conference and underscores his dedication to the preservation and appreciation for native plants. And we tried to get Adam here last year, and we just didn't work out. So we're so glad to have Adam here tonight, to share his enthusiasm for native plants as we all share our own here. So again, thank you, Adam, for being here tonight.
Pleasure. Honor. Thank you, Rick. Thank you all. All right. Hi, everybody in this room. Hi, everybody in virtual rooms, wherever you are in your homes. My name is Adam, and I'm really grateful for the Upstate chapter of the South Carolina Native Plant Society for allowing me this time to come and talk to y'all about one of my favorite subjects. Actually, I'm really excited. Tonight's talk gets to marry two of my favorite subjects. And it's a brand new presentation for me that I gave last year at a bunch of places, including at the Cullowhee Conference. And I'm excited to give it to y'all tonight. All that great introduction, and basically could sum it up with the following phrase. Hi, my name's Adam. I'm a plant nerd. Welcome to Plant Nerds Anonymous. We don't have to be anonymous. I hope to meet you all. Come on in. You're right on time. You're right on time. And let's see, turn it on. There it's on. And then technologies. You can work with it, and I'll just do that real quick. Nope, nothing's moving. All right. Technology is here to help us, and it's here to save our lives. And if we just say that over and over and over again, maybe it'll become true. What is here to save our lives are plants. And so I'll take this technological opportunity for those in the room that I brought some plants for sale. We'll cover this later, but
It wants to be stubborn.
isn't it? I like being stubborn,
Okay.
so I get it.
But you can use the key.
I'll use the keys. It's not moving. You just press them a bunch. Okay. There we go. Great.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. So everything Rick Huffman, I don't know where I'm supposed to stand. I'm going to stand all over the place. How about that? Everything Rick Huffman, who by the way is one of my heroes in this world, he doesn't know that. But if you're not a fan of Rick, you're just not paying attention. I've known him for years at the Cullowhee Conference, and even the year where we weren't able to gather and we went online, he presented and blew us out of the water. I've watched that one with you and Trad and that other guy, I don't know, so many times. It's beautiful. So everything he said is true, and everything's right there on this screen right here. And I did not grow up with a love of nature, a love of plants, doing any gardening. My mom laughs at me because I didn't eat vegetables as a kid, and I hated yard work. And now I do yard work for vegetables, and it's a beautiful thing. I love doing it. This is me. This is me in a nutshell. This is me leading a field trip in Panthertown Valley for the Cullowhee Native Plant Conference. This is my home. Y'all can't see it, but there's some native plants in here. Okay, there's a handful of things. This coral honeysuckle is blooming right now, which means the hummingbirds are close. They're here for y'all, but I live a little bit higher than y'all. Dutchman's pipeline. We'll talk about that one later. This is the view in the bottom left corner from the pasture above my house, and that's looking off towards Balsam Gap, where the Blue Ridge Parkway goes between the Great Balsams and the Plot Balsams towards Water Rock Knob. If you've ever been up there on the Blue Ridge Parkway, it's a beautiful place, and I live there. And this is Panthertown Valley, And that's my dog Magnolia Fraseri. She's a good dog. She couldn't be here with y'all today. I named her, she was Maggie when I adopted her, but I named her Magnolia Fraseri because, you know, I wanted a plant name. And then I had the vet tech spell it correctly so that when I get a vet appointment reminder for her, it says it is now time for Magnolia Fraseri's shots or whatever it is. And it's really funny. And I like it. So that's me in a nutshell. I think for me, this is a much better like curriculum vitae and bona fides than any of those other things on there. I'm just loud and people let me in the room. I love this logo. This is my business. And my friend Preston Montague from the Cullowhee Native Plant Conference designed this for me. And it's got two of my favorite flowers ringing this. One of the trout lilies, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's umbilicatum, trust me. And then gentian. Which gentian? It's got to be either Andrewsii or the Balsam Mountain gentian, of course. And then everything in between are my wildflower walks. I take people for walks in the woods, teach them about plants and flowers, tell really long stories and really bad jokes, and somehow people keep coming. And I hope y'all come too. I've got some contact information to share and stuff like that. This is basically the only slide on my presentation of any of my presentations that not only are there a bunch of words on the screen, but I'm going to read them to you. I never do that. I don't like that. But this one, when I was working this up, really resonates. And I like to use my resonant voice to emphasize that planting and encouraging native plants in our garden and landscape is among the most important actions that an individual can take that will have a large and positive impact on the environment in general and on helping to reduce biodiversity loss, in particular, the interdependence, that's key, interdependence of native plants, insects, and wildlife cannot be understated. It is imperative. Hopefully somebody walks out of here inspired and they grab this book on the way out. This is the book of Dr. Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home, entomologist who has, his work studying insects, what we call moths. Y'all might know them as butterflies, but that's a different talk for a different day. And it's amazing. And so that's the work. That's our work. It's all hands on deck time, friends. It's all hands on deck. No more can we just sit around and go, but I like it. It's pretty. Okay. I like pretty things too. Look at these plants I brought. Look at all you fine people. But we have bigger work to do, and that's the work. So I always like to start with defining terms. And what we're going to be talking about whenever we talk about native plants, this is the Native Plant Society. Y'all are on message. We're going to skip through this really quick. Exotic plants did not co-evolve in an area. I stay with and have fun, interesting discussions with the more scientific, ecologically minded folks that I know about what defines a native plant. I stay with pre-Columbian contact, pre-European contact. And it's not to say that Native American and indigenous people didn't move plants around. They did. But the difference between those movements that had slower advance and a geographic barriers that were a little bit harder to circumvent, not impossible, but harder, is relative to the difference between traditional breeding methods in agriculture and transgenetic modification, CRISPR, and all these modern technologies. It's the rate of speed of introduction of new things that is an issue. So Native Americans moved plants around. One of the poster childs of that is the Ilex vomitoria, the yaupon holly, coastal plain plant of its own. By the time European contact, you could find it in the Midwest, up in the Chicago area and everywhere. It spread along with the black drink ceremony. Are all exotic plants bad? Are all native plants good? I'd like to reframe that. Can we move beyond this bad-good dichotomy of this is bad, that's good, this is good, that's bad? We've got work to do in our language to help adjust how we feel and think about things. And as I'm out there giving blood, like many of us have, not to the American Red Cross, but to the multiflora rose, as I'm removing it from the landscape, I refrain from cussing it. It is not a bad and evil plant. It's a wonderful plant. It's a plant out of place here in North America, and it has wonderful benefits in its native range. How could that be evil? What's really evil is the cultural systems that continue to introduce new things from other places and tell people they're better than the ones we have. In England, they love Virginia creeper. Here we plant English ivy. I think they get a better deal, right? But again, y'all are on message, Native Plant Society. Invasive plants cause ecological harm. Invasive plants cause economic harm. That's a little bit needing some undoing of thought work too, because what is the economic impact of invasive plants? Often is the over-reliance on synthetic pesticide removal only, and not looking at some other ways of dealing with things. But you know, people are like, oh, that's invasive. I didn't know butterfly bush, but it's so pretty. I really love it when kudzu takes over an old building or an old car, or there was one on the old Cullowhee Road in Cullowhee, North Carolina, where the Cullowhee Native Plant Conference is held. And it climbed up this crane, and it just, you know, the kudzu monsters, they're gorgeous, right? And Oriental bittersweet, you're not allowed to sell that you're not supposed to sell that in North Carolina in any form, except in the mountains, where we have a little cultural allowance because of the reliance on people for a long time of making Thanksgiving wreaths out of it. It's a beautiful wreath, right? And then when you're done and you're transitioning into Christmas, you just toss it in your little wood pile, and then boom, you have all the multiflora Oriental bittersweet that you would want to make all the wreaths for the rest of everyone's lives, and then some. I think from what I understand, we get to thank the Biltmore estate for that plant. Native plants are wonderful. Invasive plants are a concern for us. I do not know a single invasive plant that is an endocrine disruptor or linked with birth defects. The synthetic chemicals we use are directly. I get a lot of pushback. These things are safe. They're proven safe. That's not how we regulate pesticides in North America, in the United States of America. We do not test for safety. We test for their relative toxicity. It's less toxic than this other stuff, and it's less toxic than these other things. But what we don't test are the proprietary ingredients that aren't the active compound working on killing the plant, and they're labeled according to pesticide laws as inert ingredients. They are not scientifically inert, and they're proprietary, and we still can't really even know what it is. Come on in. I'll come get you. You're doing a great job. Don't worry. I'll stand. I'll keep running my mouth. They'll look at me. And so, you know, we really need to rethink some of these approaches. And there's a difference between our home landscapes and 1,000 acres of wild area with 3 staff members who split their time trying to control invasive plants. So ecological restoration versus the home landscape. I pretty much, for the most part, unless you've got giant mimosa trees and paulownia trees, every invasive plant in your home yard and your little woody back lot on your acre plot or whatever can be controlled with non-synthetic chemical means. And if we don't remember or know how to do it, or even use that in other places, especially running volunteer groups, then we run the risk of only knowing how to spray and cut and paint, or that really horrible description, hack and squirt. All right, yikes. So all right, I'm getting off the preachy mouth. Invasive plants, they have these characteristics. Basically, if you go to a garden center or a nursery that's not one of the great native plant nurseries around, or you're not buying plants from Chris at the farmer's market, then, and you see a sign that says, easy to grow, needs no care, run screaming. Native plants are easier to grow than some, but there are no, in a landscape setting, in a harsh environment where they don't want to be on their own, nothing's really that easy. It takes care and stuff like that. But this is a really, some of these things are characteristic of plants that haven't made the invasive plant list yet, but they're showing up and they're at this beginning of this curve, which is like the best time to address them, because once they get up that bell curve and it's too late, it's done, right? Burning bush was a species of concern, Euonymus alatus in my region in Western North Carolina. And I can take you to entire hillsides of it. And it's just a nightmare. So it's an issue, and it's an issue. But really, it's about what are native plants. And there's something that native plants have that exotic plant, invasive plants do not. And they tend to look like they belong. It's an idea I learned at Cullowhee years ago, provenance. We think about it with wines. You know, it's sparkling wine unless it's from the Champagne region of France, then it's champagne. And plants have a provenance. Where did they come from? Where do they grow? Where do they grow naturally? And you can grow banana trees here. You can grow banana trees in Asheville, North Carolina, and give our modern culture a little bit of more time lag, and they'll probably have a long enough growing season to make some fruit. But they will never look like Appalachia, like a flame azalea on Roan Mountain. That's Appalachia, right? They look like they belong. They're well adapted, and they are relatively easy to establish. They don't need a lot of aftercare in your landscape. These are all the things that we've been, they sold me, but it doesn't really capture the masses like we've been capturing with the work of Dr. Doug Tallamy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. The most important, probably the most important thing, and relative to Doug Tallamy's work, is this topic right there. You like my laser pointer? They are plants that evolved in an area and co-evolved with other indigenous organisms like insects, microbes, and other members of the food web. Let me see what's, oh yeah, okay. They look like they belong, okay? They look like they belong in Appalachia. If any of the nursery people, plant growers in this area or anywhere in the Southeast can figure out how to get Mountain Andromeda, Pieris floribunda to grow anywhere except 4,500 feet and up in Appalachia on the Blue Ridge Parkway, there's an opportunity for you. And if you succeed, I want one for my yard. But they just don't want to live off the mountain. They don't. They're beautiful though. They look like they're just amazing. They would be at Lowe's and Home Depot and the Walmart and all those other big corporate box stores that I'm not supposed to mention by name. And they grow right next to another Appalachian only plant, high elevations. But this one you can grow in y'all's yards here. I bet you it does fine. That's the pink shell azalea. And they're pretty common in a native plant trade. This one is growing in a pot on my back porch, and it's also growing in pots in my car, and there's also a whole bunch of pots over there. I'm a shameless self-promoter. But that is cliff stonecrop. Cliff stonecrop, sedum glaucophyllum. And it is a native succulent that likes full sun and good drainage and loves a rock garden and will spread like crazy. And I will sell them to you. Trout lilies, come on. And one of the leather flowers, all I'm going to call that is Biorna complex and walk away, and you can ask Dan or something. I'm not. But these are this is plants that they're like, the locals around me are like, why would I buy that? That's growing for free on the back 40 and stuff. And that, you know, that work has been there for a while to try to figure it out. the thing about native plants, let's go back to this. The thing about native plants and that co-evolution, very quickly, plants eat sunlight. It's called photosynthesis. It's the way energy from outside of this system is introduced into this system. They eat sunlight and convert it into sugar and carbohydrates. Insects eat the plant leaves, primarily and specifically caterpillars of moth and butterfly. Also, butterflies are smooth day flying moths, and it's not a real thing. Y'all don't believe me, but I just saw a talk by Jim McCormick from Ohio, and you will. And when you come to Cullowhee this summer to hear Lenny Lample from Charlotte, you will believe, you'll become a believer like, there is no such thing as a butterfly. It's not true, of course. But so plants eat sunlight. The caterpillars of insects eat the leaves of the plants, converting that chlorophyll-based sugar and carbohydrates into their own bodies. Critters come along and eat those things, and energy is moved and cycled up into the ecosystem. Exotic plants do not have that relationship. Go out and look at the boxwood in your yard, the giant meatball of a boxwood. I have one too. Giant meatball of a boxwood. There is not a leaf that has a hole in it. We used to think that was great. Oops. Now we're losing this whole function and system, and Rachel Carson's sad prediction is coming true, and Silent Spring is on our horizon if we don't do anything about it. We are doing something. Y'all are doing something. South Carolina Native Plant Society is doing it, and it's planting and using native plants in the landscape and removing exotic invasive plants from your landscape so they don't spread into the wild areas. That's the work, friends. So I'm a gardener, and to get my ideas wrapped around this topic that I think about a lot, I went and looked up what are the functions and roles of a plant in a garden. What do we use plants for? What are they good for? Why are they there, right? So attracting, especially for organic or sustainable or regenerative or whatever word gets made up next time to encompass not reliance on synthetic fertilizers and synthetic pesticides produced from fossil fuels, but a reliance on old natural ways of growing. You need to attract beneficial insects. You need pollinators, you need predators, you need this whole just aliveness that a thriving ecosystem has. You'll want to mimic that in your garden. Flowers and plants are beautiful. Cut flowers is a really interesting and potentially economically beneficial way of making some money. People buy cut flowers. What if you could be growing native flowers for the cut flower industry around you local, so that the flowers didn't have to be grown in South America or Central America, cut, shipped immediately to the flower market in Holland where they're brokered and is shipped all around the world. Those bunches of flowers at the Ingles, I assume y'all have Ingles down here or Publix or whatever that, they look like, oh, this is nice little flowers. I'll buy them. Not realizing the ecological and economic impacts of that choice. But cut flower production is great. And you can cut your own flowers. Some of them don't cut. Don't come into my yard and try to bring home a pink later slipper to cut. They're not in my yard, but they're up the hill. We eat plants. I eat plants. Do y'all eat plants? Yeah. Don't eat the delphinium though. They're kind of toxic. Don't eat that. But we eat plants. We use plants for medicine. Plants are medicinal. I love modern advances in medicine. Like if I have a heart attack while getting so excited about showing y'all some of my favorite plants, or I get my leg cut off somehow, say I go on Lake Jocassee to go see the Oconee bells and I fall off the front of a boat, hypothetically. That happened once. Not on Jocassee. I want a doctor to sew my leg back on, right? I don't want to put a balm or a salve on it and think it's going to be okay. But once that's done and it's healing, and I'm looking at potential infections, I want to put a plant salve or balm on it because it's gonna work way better than any pharmaceutical. And when it comes to sniffles or any of this stuff, you know, like allergies, spring, fall allergies, common ailments, itchiness on there, the CVS pharmacy has nothing on the weeds in the ditch outside of the CVS pharmacy. So just walk in there and get it. So that's where we're at. Attracting beneficial insects, pollinators, and predators is one of the most important things you can do for a vegetable garden. You'll want to have something in bloom at all seasons. I've seen a lot of lists of flowers to plant to attract beneficial insects, and they're all exotic garden flowers. And most of the insects that we're wanting to attract into our gardens are native things like the wasps and the flies that try to pretend like they're wasps, and things eating your the tobacco or tomato hornworm, you know, that's eating your tomatoes, and it's this big funky caterpillar that turns into a beautiful sphinx moth if you allow it and you don't kill it, but it's eating your tomatoes. So you want to get rid of it. What I like to do is I pull it off the tomato and I go find a relative of the tomato over in the weedy ditches and the verge and place it on that. Things like thorny hedge apple. They'll eat that. You know, anything in the Solanaceae family. And then you get to have tomatoes. But if you're picking them off and you're like, you're not getting my tomatoes, and you see one with these white pouches on its back, leave it alone. Hands off. The braconid wasp has used that caterpillar as a hospital and a nursery and a commissary for its babies. I'll just put it that way. It's really creepy. My sister doesn't let me tell things like this. It lays its eggs inside of there. They hatch out and it paralyzes the insect, and then they hatch out and eat their way out and then cocoon and go into chrysalis and come out as adults from the back of it. That's so fun, right? Who needs horror movies? I love it. So this is not in any means a comprehensive list by any means, but early, mid, and late, everything from the first flowering bloom of the red maple all the way through your goldenrods and Joe Pye weeds. Just keep an edge going. If you can find a way to get some native plant flowers and plants to attract beneficial insects in the middle of your vegetable garden without them taking over. So don't use goldenrod anywhere near your vegetable garden. Not any of those. But you can then bring them right in. You don't even have to have it on the verges. But if it's close enough, they will find the food and get there. Trap crops is a really interesting thing. So you can plant and sacrifice. You have some sacrificial plants that maybe the pests like better than the ones you want to eat. One of my favorites for that is evening primrose, Oenothera biennis, and Japanese beetles. They love that plant. And you can go out, if you let one go and it's in full leaf out, not the first year's growth of the basil leaves, but when it's going to go into flower and it's full leaf out, you come out to that in the morning during Japanese beetle time, and they're loaded on that thing. And that's when you can whip out the dirt devil or your dust buster and vacuum them up off of that. You know, whatever you do for Japanese beetles, do not buy one of those pheromone traps and plant it in your yard. The joke is you talk your neighbors down the block to get one of those because it calls in all the Japanese beetles from everywhere, and you've already got plenty. But you can also sacrifice some other things. You know, that insect also likes to eat on the leaves of blackberry and raspberry. And we can make tea from blackberry and raspberry, but we're mostly after the berries. And when you stress a plant, when plant insects are chewing on it, plants go into reproductive mode. And for us, that means more blackberries and raspberries. So let them at that and keep them off of your stuff. And diversity is supported by native plants. And I got to tell you, when it comes to planting a native plant, definitely pick a good location that allows this one to spread because it's in the mint family. But when it comes to that, there is no better for that than the short-toothed mountain mint. A few years ago, the University of Delaware and the little botanical garden that works with them right up there close, Mount Cuba. Thank you. They did some research trials. They're always doing research trials on cool stuff. and they looked at what native plants attracted the most number and diversity and kind of beneficial insects, of pollinating insects. And short-toothed mountain mint specifically, all the mountain mints are awesome. All the pycnanthemums are great. Pycnanthemum muticum took number 1 or number 2 in every category they looked at. It's a rock star. And I got to tell you, I planted at the entrance to every garden that I've ever, put in or helped run, and I encourage people to plant it. And I use it like in India, they use the Tulsi or holy basil to kind of like release some good smells to keep the evil spirits of the outside world from coming into my home or my garden. I walk in and out with a little Appalachian holy mountain mint. But I have spent an inordinate amount of time, way too long. I had other jobs to do. There was compost that wasn't going to turn itself. Actually, it will, but it takes about a year. And I had just a day and other things to do. But the mountain mint is blooming, and I'm trying to walk by it, and all of a sudden I'm like, I have never seen this insect before in my life. There it is on mountain mint. I've counted 40 different critters on it at once, different kinds, not just 40 total. Like everything from large black and blue iridescent wasps that are as long as my hand to the tiniest sweat bees of green and golden iridescence, ants, moths, even things you might call a butterfly, skippers, beetles, all on it at the same time, all just nectaring. And one of the things that leads to that is it has a cluster, that's why it's called cluster, of small flowers. And I heard this recently too, is that plants with multiple tiny flowers support more pollinators than one flower with one nectar source, because the big bumblebees can't just bumble everybody out of the way and take it for themselves. And so they're all over it. And like every time I've ever taken a photograph of mountain mint and blown it up at home, I'm seeing things I didn't even know were on it. And they're so tiny, and it's just amazing. This plant grows, maybe 3 feet in a mound. Full sun, it's going to have more flowers. This is literally a hedgerow in the bottom left corner for those of y'all online, along the street, of mountain mint. It grows to a same height like it was a cultivar, but it's a straight species. It's an amazing plant. And food and medicine. You can use the mint to settle your stomach. You can use the mint to flavor ice cream, or I've just been told that a wonderful combination for mint that's really popular in England is potatoes with lots of butter and mint on it. And I can't wait to try that very soon. You can make mountain mint mojitos. You can make Appalachian mountain mint mojitos if you use like I do, my favorite whiskey, which just happens to be clear and untaxed. And it's really delicious. It's a great plant. And it's just in mass, but it's not growing in isolation. This is common milkweed and a really nice bee balm behind there, and things will grow with it. But it is a mint, so it'll spread, and if you don't site it correctly, you will have plenty to share with your friends and neighbors, or to pot up and bring to a talk about native plants, hypothetically. So cut flowers, I'm not an expert on the cut flower industry. I love flowers. I mostly like to look at them while they're alive and growing. And some of these I didn't intend to make a whole slide of yellow, but when it comes to aesthetic beauty and a landscape design, not the wild areas, but in a formal landscape like you might find in downtown Spartanburg, you'd want blocks and colors and drifts so that it appeals to the average eye. All y'all in this room are gonna goof out over a weed growing under like an andina, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that's right there. But most people aren't going to see past an andina. So you make these big color blocks. And, this is St. John's wort, and that's probably that very common cultivar, the sunburst of the frondosa. Green-headed coneflower, green-headed coneflower, green-headed coneflower in everybody's yard. Rudbeckia laciniata. Thermopsis. That's a Carolina Carolina bush pea or some such like that. And then sundrops, Oenothera fructicosa, one of my favorite plants for Rick Huffman's and I's random trips up onto the Blue Ridge Parkway, where we don't plant it. I just run into them up there every once in a while. It's a lot of fun. And that Oenothera, it's a perennial, unlike the evening primrose, which is biennial. That one is perennial. It has a long bloom time because it has multiple flowers on every cluster, that as soon as this one's done blooming, you can see the buds right behind it and they'll pop and bloom, and it's great. And then the fall color, we think about fall color for trees, but herbaceous wildflowers fall color can be just stunning. Indian cucumber root fall color, magnificent. And the color of that plant is just really, really stellar. And there's just so many more that you can use for things. I love to eat. I'm gonna eat after we get done talking. I'm gonna eat again tomorrow morning. I love to eat plants, you know, they're really delicious. And there's so many native plants that we can eat that are delicious. I give walks, I lead trips, I teach plants to lay people. I'm teaching common plants because I'm really drawn to the study of ethnobotany, the relationship of plants and people. And so in ethnobotany, we're not talking about using a super rare species of something for medicine. It's the common things. And common things are all around, you know, leafy greens of violets, of Soshan. Has anybody grown Soshan? Anybody know that plant? Of course you are. It's actually the one I was just saying, green-headed coneflower, Rudbeckia laciniata. Great landscape plant for full sun to part shade, edges, spreads like crazy. But in the springtime, way before the flower blooms, in the springtime, it's just leafing out and flushing. And it is among the favorite spring greens of Cherokee, Catawba, Creek, and other Southwestern indigenous people whose land we're on right now today. And you go out and you harvest the leaves when they're flushed, and they are delicious, and they have a super strong flavor that some people don't really like, you know, but you can do like you would with poke salad and boil it and drain the water off to get some of the strong. I don't recommend doing that because it's not toxic, and all that you're removing are a bunch of soluble nutrients into that water. So I like, if it's too strong for folks, I'll mix in some more mild greens to balance out the flavor. But you know that feeling on that first warm spring day after a long cold winter? Actually, let me back up. Do y'all remember when we used to have winter? It was a time of year when things would get really, really cold and stay that way. It still is a time of year where it gets dark and stays that way, no matter how much they try to trick our bodies and our brains with this daylight saving time nonsense stuff. But and so all winter long, you're just eating, like traditionally eating stored foods, storable foods. There's not a lot of things growing. There's hardly any flowers blooming. It's dark all the time. There's no hope in the world. You're sitting in front of a wood stove in a rocking chair, drinking bourbon and reading wildflower books. I mean, hypothetically, you know, I don't know y'all from Adam. But and then you get that first warm day, and it's like, oh, I am going to go on and live. I'm going to do great things. Everything's wonderful, right? Eating a mess of Soshan, the green-headed coneflower, gives me that feeling from the inside out. It makes my fingertips tingle with hope. It is a spring tonic herb. You eat that, you eat some of these other spring greens that are just growing for free, and it's just amazing. Eat roots. The sun chokes. There's other tuberous sunflowers. You've probably heard of the Three Sisters approach of gardening, where you grow corn, beans, and squash as companions all in the same planting. It's an indigenous folkway and system that is found in all parts of what we call the Americas. In the Midwest, or of what's now United States and Canada, there was a fourth sister, and it was some of the edible sunflowers, either eating the seeds pressing oils or eating the roots of some that are tuberous, including the wonderful sunchoke, or what's improperly called Jerusalem artichoke. It's called Jerusalem artichoke because I don't understand the artichoke part, but Jerusalem is just English pronunciation of girasol, which is French for sunflower. That's why we call it Jerusalem artichoke. I like sunchokes. Eating flowers is amazing, right? If you're not eating flowers, if you're eating at a restaurant and they put a flower on your plate, it's not just pretty decoration. You can eat it and it's delicious. Those little orchids. But grabbing a handful of fresh red buds off of a tree and putting it into your salad, beautiful. My buddy, my good friend Mark Williams, a plant teacher up in Western North Carolina, ethnobiologist, reminds me that we eat not just with our mouths and our bellies, but with our eyes. Things are beautiful, they taste better. And those flowers in there are not only beautiful, but they are often dark and purple or dark reds in colors, which equates to nutritional benefit of anthocyanins that help rid your body of the free radicals, right? Get those free radicals out of there. Some radicals. So eat the flowers. We eat fruits. Y'all are in pawpaw country down here, right? There's just pawpaws all. Y'all just got pawpaws coming out your pockets, and I need to come visit. There's native fruits. The strawberries are blooming in the yard weeds around my garden and the pasture, and they're not the mock strawberry, the false strawberry. They are Fragaria virginica, the sweetest little strawberry you'll ever bite. Delicious. I can go at any time of year to a grocery store and buy the biggest strawberries you've ever seen, sliced into them. They're solid white on the inside. They look like styrofoam. They taste like styrofoam with a little hint of strawberry flavoring. Or I can wait until June and July and eat the wild strawberries growing along the side of the road on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And they're so small, my big plunky fingers can't even show you how small they are. They're about that big. But their strawberry flavor is this large, and they're amazing, loaded with nutrition. Plant teacher, amazing humanitarian in the world. When he was with us, Frank Cook says, eat something wild every day. There's a lot of things. I can share this presentation with y'all if you want to take photos of things like that. I'm not going through everything because we have limited time, and I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I like to run my mouth. Some plants we have to go far and wide to see. We have to make big special botanical trips and go seek them out. And you're lucky if you're given a little GPS pin, or you're given some clues about, like last year I was shown a population of white pink lady slippers, genetic variety, not a speciation or anything. And it was park your car here, cut up the mountain, pick up a trail. When you see this rock in the trail, go up to the top of the ridge. And it was that kind of thing. Other plants, all you got to do is walk out near your yard. And they're there, like this violet, this common blue violet, right? It's in your yard, blooming right now. Unless you have one of those yards and lawns that's so meticulously maintained that the only thing that's growing in it are blades of exotic turf grass and nothing else. And if you do have that, I would like to have a deeper conversation with you later about the fetishized American lawn and what in the heck are we doing to the world. But anyway, y'all's yards have the violets. Appalachian folk, mountain settlers, they would pick the violets and candy them by dipping them into sugar water, crystallizing it, or even going so far as getting egg whites and sugar, mixing it up and painting it on and giving it a nice edge wash to make candied violets to decorate cakes. Those go into my spring salad. Those go into my spring salad in abundance, but don't sleep on the leaves. You can just make out a little leaf here in the picture, but the violet leaves are heart-shaped, which tells us through the old ways that they are good for the heart, and they are good for the heart. They are loaded with nutrition. The violet leaf is a very mild salad green. It's not going to affect the flavor of anything you add with it, and it's going to take on the flavor of whatever dressing, even if you use ranch dressing. I'm not here to judge. Y'all do your ranch however you want to. But you can go out and pick violet leaves in your yard, and when you're holding a violet leaf, you're holding 5 times more vitamin C per volume than an orange has. 5 times. Granted, to get the same volume as a single orange, you need a big bowl of violet leaves. Once you have that, you got 5 times the vitamin C. Plus, you have vitamin A that's not found in the orange. Plus, it was not grown in industrial ag conditions in Central or South America, picked early, artificially ripened while shipped using fossil fuels to sit on a grocery store shelf where 40 to 60% of them then get thrown away. But it was picked for free in your yard, and the only energy cost was what you ate for breakfast. Pick your violets, put it in your salad. I will caution you this. They have another wonderful nutritional component that younger folks don't have to think much about, but the older we get, the more we have to start thinking about this. In botanical terminology, we describe it as mucilage, but that sounds gross. So that's not very marketable, right? Nutritional science called the exact same thing, soluble fiber. Got to get your good soluble fiber, right? Ironically, the #1 product still told on television for soluble fiber is Metamucil. That's metamucilage. Nasty. Violet leaves are the slimy goodness that you find in okra and sassafras leaves, which if you didn't know, take a sassafras leaf, dry it, grind it into a powder, and that's filet powder for thickening your gumbo. Or you can thicken your gumbo with okra. And if you want to watch a Cajun person's head explode, hand them a bowl of gumbo that has both okra and filet in it. One or the other. You can thicken soups, stews, sautés, and other things, even a smoothie with violet leaves. It's going to help thicken things up. It's going to give you all those nutrients and wonderful benefits, but I will caution you this. If you do pick a big bowl of violet leaves for your spring salad, do not go on a long car ride or do not go on a long hike shortly after. You will be making a bunch of big fluffy poo. And really, isn't that the goal? I feel like George Kellogg every time I get to that point, but you know, isn't that the goal, right? Let's hear it for big fluffy poo. We use plants as medicine. I talked about this a little bit. I'm not an herbalist. I know some great ones. You don't need to be an herbalist to use a lot of plants for medicine. If you've got that scratchiness in the back of your throat right now from the spring pine pollen, go get some chickweed out of your garden, put it into a jar, fill it with cold water, let it sit for an hour or two, then drink that, and it all goes away. Like that, no side effects, no contraindications as far as I know. Medicinal plants, and even in herbalism, there's still a reliance on traditional Chinese herbal plants, which are magical and powerful and wonderful, and European herbal knowledge and the plants from Europe. But there is an entire pharmacopoeia of native plants around us that have been and continue to be used by indigenous people, no matter my ancestors' cultural efforts to wipe them out. There's native analogs to every one of these European or Asian herbs. And some of the wonderful medicinally healing Asian herbs can be really negatively impacting the forest as they escape and get out there into invasiveness. I'm not here to talk about herbalism or anything like that, but I do want to, and I'm really just so excited whenever I hear this crossover from the native plant activists and the herbalist activists, and it's the idea of preservation through propagation or conservation through propagation. There are wonderful native plants that are so wonderfully active in their medicinal benefit. They have been over harvested almost to extinction. The poster child being ginseng, but also golden seal. And golden seal has some wonderful properties, you know. If we can, instead of digging the golden seal from the woods, even if you own the woods, even if you have a permit, we've just wiped out so much of their native range through our own land use and activity that the ones that are there I think are better there than in a tea or an alcohol extraction. But you can take a little root cutting. You can take a leaf cutting on some plants. You can take a seed, bring it home. The mother plant gets to live there. You get to grow it in your landscape or your garden. You can divide a big clump and plant the main ones that were there right back there and take the little side baby roots and bring them home and make new plants. They get to live in the woods. You get to have their beauty in your landscape. You get to use them as medicine. Everything wins, especially those things that have nothing to do with us, like the little bees and the beetles and the flies that pollinate it, or the insects that live under it, or the microbes that are in the soil around it that are specialized to those plants. When you're foraging, when you're collecting, when I first started studying these things, it was a 25% rule. We've gone way past that in our negative impacts as a culture. Think 10%. You're collecting wild seed for any kind of project. Try to just take 10% of the seed on a clump, or 10% of the seed from one plant, or 10% of the seed from the whole population. And that way, when somebody else comes along and didn't know you were just there, and they're taking their 10%, there's still plenty for the plant reproduction, and there's plenty for all those organisms. Seal and some of these other native, there's some really
Going on. Mm. No, it stopped. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. You could turn it on. Because nothing's happening right now. I don't know why.
You can see there's a little icon next to Pam's name where it looks like she is having problems with connection. So that's why we can't like hear them or see anything.
Well, that's right. They're recording it, so that's fine.
We're gonna go back in and hit you. No, fuck that. I'm not getting with that fucking Sasquatch. No, hey, no, you always are comfortable, bro. Hey, I'm just trying to get this leg back on track. Okay, look, couple trees. So before you know it, it'll be 1, 2, I'm bucking 3, 2, yeah, 3, okay, 4, she shoves my back dick right in the tight.
Being killed, you cause it to go in a super growth mode. But don't do that. I did. Now I've got Japanese knotweed I could ever want to eat. But when it comes up out of the ground as a little shoot, and it's asparagus phase, I like to call it, it's delicious. It's really, really good. We're not going to eat our way out of that problem, though. Not by a long shot. And then autumn olive, it's like still is recommended by a lot of people in the permaculture world of LA Agnes because it's a nitrogen fixing plant, as if the soil needs more active nitrogen like that. But anyway, they're in Cherokee, they call it a jelly belly tree because the little fruits taste like jelly belly candies, and they do. They're really, really good. Also, as far as I understand, they are the highest source of lycopene of any fruit. Really important nutritional benefit to that plant. And there's just thousands of fruits on every fruit you pull off and eat is one less that gets eaten by a bird, flown away, pooped out, and planted. So great plant. It's related. Russian thorny olive makes a little hard fruit. I don't know anybody that makes that, but the yeah, they're cousins. You got the magic touch, my friend. I don't know. There you go. Oh, oh boy.
My bad, sorry.
It's all right. Get a little drink. But anybody like some snacks? I've got some trail mix and Mr. Good Bar. Crackle. Y'all, I mean, I'm not being facetious. Y'all are doing a great job under trying and difficult circumstances.
Yeah, can't beat them.
Eat our way through this whole presentation. There we go. So yeah, this is a golden seal. It's probably this close to blooming right in my house right now. They'll get really big. This is such an at-risk plant. Its best purpose is to live its life in the woods. More so than it helps. It's a helper though. And it's true that there's more compounds for benefiting human medicinally than just the berberine. So you won't get the same benefits from the Japanese barberry, but there's other approaches going back to that preservation through propagation and the world of forest farming, which allows people to grow these plants for use and not at the expense of wild populations. We use native plants for we use plants in our garden for nutrient cycling, for water management, things like that. Runoff filtration. There's nothing better than those riparian buffer zone plants like buttonbush and ninebark and all these plants that you can do the live staking. You can cut dormant twigs and just pound them into the ground and then jump out of the way because they come shooting up out of there slowly. You'll be able to get away. There's a thing in organic gardening and permaculture. It's an idea called a hyperdynamic mineral accumulator. And supposedly there's certain plants that like to go down into the subsoil, pull out minerals, bring them up and put them in their leaves in abundance. Well, it turns out most all plants do that. And the famous comfrey, one of the biggest ones for that, isn't necessarily doing it better, according to the things I researched when I was looking this up. But it's still something I do. Any of y'all organic gardeners out here or like weirdo permaculture-based native plant organic farmers by chance? Run across, if you have one of those in the room, I don't know. By chance, I've run across Dr. Cho's natural farming or Korean natural farming system. It's a really neat thing. If you haven't, go on a Google search wormhole tonight. You're welcome. But one of the things they do is they pull spring growing weeds, and I've started this too. Really fast growing, vital growing weeds that you're pulling out of your garden anyway. And you take them and you fill a 5-gallon bucket with them, cover it with water, put a rock on it so that the leaves stay under the water, put a lid on it, walk away for 3 weeks, come back, it's fermented. And you have all the liquid nitrogen and other mineral nutrient, organic fertilizer you need for the whole year in a 5-gallon bucket for your garden. And it costs nothing. Well, it costs your energy in doing. That's it. Simple. Nitrogen fixation. Again, going back to that permaculture love of the autumn olive. I want people to grow more honey locusts. Just because that great native plant, it's a weed, it's trashy in landscapes and litters, blah, blah, blah. Those big bean pods are filled with honey, just like the honeybees make. You crack it open when they fall out of the tree, and it's like honeycomb in there, and it's sweet. And I've had honey locust pie. It tastes just like pecan pie, that real thick sweetness. Oh man, with some good heavy cream on it, it was delicious. And the animal that used to help spread that plant around is not with us anymore because it was the giant sloth of the Pleistocene era and woolly mastodons. So like, I laugh when I see I'm driving down the road like I was driving down here today, and I see like there's little window appliques and they got the sloth in the back seat. And I'm like, there used to be sloths as big as your SUV. And they would eat pawpaws and walk away and poop them out. Or they would eat the honey locust and walk away. That's why honey locust has those big thorns on it, is to fight off giant sloths. Crazy world we live in. It's also a reference and a reflection on just how old these plants are and how long they've been living, how long they've been co-evolving with the other insects around and things like that. I went looking for riparian buffer zone plant pictures and I couldn't find one. So instead I decided to share with y'all my sister cats, Hazel Alder, Alnus cerulata, full name, and Silky Willow, Salix ceracea. And I did make the vet tech type everything in and put it in italics and make sure. The vet loves me, but the techs and the administrative assistant people are just like, oh. don't get more animals. I'm like, I'm getting more animals. It's happening. So that's the general gist of the talk. And then I like to feature some. Come on. What Star Trek episode did this flower come out of, right? This thing looks, I mean, why do we have to go around the world to find pretty flowers for our yards when we have passion flower? And it's the host of fritillary butterflies, or if you like to sound stilted and proper, fritillaries. I like thinking fritters, right? There's a fritillary butterfly right there. Baby, anyway, youngster. And have you ever sat and watched the bumblebees pollinating this thing? It's one of my favorite shows on there, and it doesn't go into reruns. It's just brand new episodes every day while they're blooming. So at the base of these frilliness is nectar, and the bumblebees that pollinate it are going in there after the nectar. They're not trying to gather pollen. They're not trying to do anything except get a drink. And the stamens, the male part of the flower that produces the pollen, I'm assuming y'all remember all the different parts of the flower, right? Because you were taught that in elementary school, and your elementary school teacher was a saint, and she was a great educator. And if you don't remember all the different parts of the flower, it's not her fault, it's yours. We're talking pistil stamens here, right? Pistil is the stigma style of the ovary. Stamen is the anther and filament. We're remembering, your elementary school teacher did not teach it the way that I like to teach it when I'm teaching plants out in the woods with people, because it goes like this. So the pistils and stamens. Pistils are the female part. Stamens are the male. Females, y'all can be real pistils who are often stigmatized for your style. The ovary's obvious. Whereas stamen, you think you know all the anthers, but the women will fill them in later. Stamen, anther, filament, pistil, stigma style ovary. There will be a test later. These stamens that produce the pollen, the male part, are aimed downwards to the underside of the flower, and they are the exact height that when the bumblebees are nectaring, it brushes pollen onto the hairs on their back. Doesn't stop them. It's like it was measured, because they measured it over millions of years of coevolution, right? You don't get that. And this is a great food, and it's a really interesting medicine. A relaxing tea can be made from the leaves. It's a nervine, really will help you calm down over the evening. And if you get like 2 or 3 or 4 of your friends or loved ones together, and y'all all eat a big salad of passion flower leaves together, it is said, not by me, all right, I'm saying it right now, that when you go to sleep, y'all might share dreams and be able to communicate in that dream state with each other. Yes.
The passion flower family is known for having cyanide.
I did not know that.
I talked to, in the name escapes me now, I talked to an ethnologist, PhD in ethnology a few years ago. I questioned him about that. He said he would not eat passion.
Interesting. So I was just asked if I knew the relationship of passion flower and cyanide components, and whether that means we should not eat it. A PhD ethnobotanist suggested not. I will be looking into that, because I'm always curious on stuff like that. I also know that we eat plants loaded with cyanide in high amounts all the time and have no problem, primarily cherries. We don't eat the pits. Don't eat the pits. Grind them up, put them in your enemy's little meal, and no, would never suggest such a thing. That's a great question. And so, take everything. I guess this is the time of the talk for the disclaimer. I am poor. I have nothing. You can sue me. You'll win. You'll never get a penny. Green-headed coneflower, Sochan, Rudbeckia laciniata. It's an amazing plant. I talked about it, spring tonic herb, the edible greens. Here's one of my favorite things about eating this plant and growing it in my flower garden. So when you grow lettuce or kale or other leafy greens, and you're eating on the greens and then they bolt, you're done eating, right? And then usually you rip the lettuce up and plant some more or plant something else. Well, when the Sochan bolts, you get the green-headed coneflower. So you get to eat the leaves of the plant. And then eventually you get to enjoy that. It doesn't, you don't kill it. It's not like you're ripping a carrot out of the ground and it's screaming, ah, dying. But you're just eating the leaves and then it makes more and you eat those. And then eventually it's like, all right, I'm done. And it makes a flower and then you get the flower and it's beautiful. And then pipevine swallowtail butterfly will come in and land on it. Not a bad trade-off, I'd say. Jewelweed. Once again, this is my house at a different stage of growth. And I like to let the jewelweed go, but I love jewelweed. It's a beautiful flower. It's called jewelweed because it has these tiny hairs on the leaves that are silicate based that when water droplets land on them or dew, and the sun shines on them, they refract the light silver and it looks like little jewels. This is one of my favorite plants for teaching. This is both cure and prevention of poison ivy. And that used to be considered just folk wisdom, but they've actively found compounds that neutralize the toxin of poison ivy in the jewelweed. Any itchy skins, if you're out picking stinging nettle for your stinging nettle soups or your stinging nettle teas, and do that, but wear gloves. And you forget to wear your gloves and you're getting lit up and it feels like ants are on you biting because the same toxic compound in the stinging nettle that's lighting you up is boric acid, same as in an ant bite. Go find the jewelweed, crush up a plant, rub it on you, it goes away immediately. They have edibles. They have exploding seed pods. What's cooler than that, right? Teaching this plant to kids and you touch it. It's called touch me not and they explode. Next fall into summer when you're popping them like nature's bubble wrap, because that's what I do. You know, the pop, pop, pop. It's so rewarding. I'm just like, it's a surprise every time. Capture some of them. Eat those little seeds. They taste just like walnuts. They're amazing, right? They're medicinal, but I love this plant as a hummingbird feeder. So y'all feed birds, bunch of bird people with the native plant world. You hang up your hummingbird feeders, right? And hopefully you're following the directions. You're not using that red color dye. We've gone away from that. You're using white sugar and water in a 3 parts water, 1 part sugar combination. They're recommending now that every time you refill it, and usually they want you to do this about once a week, is to clean it out, sanitize it, because there's a fungal disease being spread by the bird feeders on the hummingbird feeders that's leading to the decline of hummingbirds. That's a sadness. We're trying to help them, and we heard of it. I'm really excited to announce that y'all have been working on an invention at my house. I'm very close to releasing it and working through the patent agencies and stuff. And I'm just still working on a name for it, but it's an automatically refilling, automatically self-sterilizing hummingbird feeder. I'm thinking of calling it a flower. What do you think? Yeah. So the hummingbird flies in, takes a drink of nectar, boom, sends a signal to the plant, produce more nectar, automatically refilling. And they have found bacteria that live in flower nectar that is antifungal. So it keeps that disease from spreading. And this jewelweed is one of their favorites. And if you grow this plant right here, here's worth the price of admission and me running over, and y'all are gonna have to get a shepherd's hook and get me off of here because I'll just keep talking. Are we 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I'm going for a half an hour. They're gonna have to call the sheriff. I'm just kidding. 20 minutes, we can do it. We'll load the plants out. I do all that, but also I'd rather just talk about plants and stuff. But I have started using jewelweed on purpose. So if you grow berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and you're mad at the birds for getting all your berries, and you want to put that bird netting over, and then you do, and then you're pulling dead birds and dead snakes and critters out of it, and you feel like a murderous, horrible human being, because you kind of are. Not y'all, just the general you. I noticed one year when I wasn't as careful in my weeding in my berry patch, and the jewelweed grew up in it, that, you know, hummingbirds, these sweet, delightful, lovely little critters, if you sit and watch them, you sit and watch them. They're mean. They're aggressive. They're borderline a-holes, right? And they just swoop in, and any other hummingbird and other birds that try to come into their territory, they chase them out. And now that I let the jewelweed grow with my berries, either I eat the berry or it falls off and rots. The jewelweed are bringing in the hummingbirds that are working to protect the berries. And hummingbirds don't eat fruits unless they're like, every once in a while they'll sip on a rotted one that's fermented, and I think they're a little high strung like me, maybe a little need a cocktail of the evening. So goldenrod, really quickly, y'all know it doesn't cause your fall seasonal allergies, right? The pollen's too heavy to fly through the air. The only way to get pollen of goldenrod into your nose to cause a histamine reaction is to pick one of those flowers, shove it up into your nose. I don't recommend doing that. The bees love it. There will be a bee on there. It will sting you on the inside of your nose. You will have a histamine reaction to that. Goldenrod is not causing fall seasonal allergies. It cures fall seasonal allergies better than any other medication sold for allergy relief that ironically or conspiratorially have goldenrod on their cover. They don't want us to know that this is food and medicine. That knowledge was taken from us. The goldenrod teas for your fall seasonal allergies. St. John's wort. Not this species, but some of the common herbaceous weedy ones. Wonderful for depression. You can eat milkweed flowers, make a flower fritter. What doesn't taste good if you dip it in batter and fry it, right? And you get to support monarch butterflies. Asters, they are one of the hardest things to keep away from crazy guy with weed eater that likes to fire up the weed eater and kill everything in sight. Y'all know who you are. Let them grow. I thank you for your time. My name is Adam Bigelow. I love native plants. I'm here to help you. I invite you to come up the mountain. We're not that far away. Hour and a half, 2 hours. Come to Cullowhee Native Plant Conference. It's the third week in July. You're already probably too late to get the best stuff, but you can still come to the conference. And next year, just go ahead and pencil it in. Third week of July for the rest of your life. Come to Cullowhee. Y'all know it's magic up there in Cullowhee. It's a beautiful thing. And come for a walk in the woods. I have contact information, and I will be here helping to load all this stuff out. And I'm grateful for y'all and your time here today. That was fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I can entertain a question or two if y'all have any. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, just like that.
Good job. Thanks, Adam.
Pleasure. Dwarf larkspur.